What if roommate syndrome was a feature of marriage and not a bug? Like, what if roommate syndrome was supposed to happen to your relationship and it's not happening because you did something wrong? Let me explain. Every single romantic relationship, if you stay together long enough, will reach this inevitable crossroads. It's that moment when you have this realization that the life that you thought you would have with this person you wanted to spend the rest of your life with doesn't look even remotely close to what you had expected. Let's look at Taylor and Pat as an example. They had completely lost their spark. Neither one was pursuing the other like they had at the beginning of their relationship. They weren't flirting with each other anymore. They weren't really laughing together very much. And they didn't even really look forward to seeing each other at the end of the day. They had created this barely workable relationship dynamic, this dance, this unspoken agreement that they continued to live out day to day. They both had worked out how to get by doing the bare minimum to invest in the relationship so that they could never be accused of checking out, but they also never got so overly invested that they felt like their partner had the upper hand on them, that they had more power. Over the years, they silently made a list of topics of conversation that they needed to avoid in order to not have to deal with the big emotions that came along with these hard conversations. So they never really talked about last month's credit card statement or the mountain of junk piling up in the garage or problems that they had with each other's parents. They had learned that if they didn't talk about this stuff, it was less likely to disrupt this delicate balance that they had created. They had created their short list of like 3 restaurants that they knew they could agree on. And every time they had a date night, which was seldom, by the way, they would go to one of these 3 restaurants and they would order the exact same dish and have the exact same conversation over and over again. And the most passionate thing that they experienced most weeks was that brief peck on the lips when they were reunited at the end of the day. And despite all this, Taylor and Pat counted themselves as lucky. They weren't stuck in a relationship that was destructive or abusive, even though the relationship they had didn't really feel invigorating, vibrant, or exciting to them anymore. Honestly, the relationship was a shadow of what they thought it would be when they first fell in love with each other, but they had learned to give up on fairy tales a long time ago. They'd heard from more than one couple that the best way to make sure that your marriage survives the test of time is to just get rid of all expectations. And they ended up with plenty of excuses as to why their marriage wasn't what they thought it should be. They'd gotten busy, they had kids, their jobs were demanding, they were easily distracted, they were tired, they felt like their needs weren't being met through the marriage anymore. And honestly, they just didn't have enough time or energy to give anything other than the bare minimum to their relationship. And then one day, Taylor woke up and she realized what had happened. They'd gotten stuck. They weren't really married anymore. They were more like glorified roommates who shared a bed and a bank account and some kids. Deep down, she knew that they still really loved each other, but to call them lovers now would be a flat out lie. The relationship they had was not what either one of them had signed up for. And she was honestly terrified that this roommate syndrome situation was the beginning of the end of their marriage. Or worse, that this is what their marriage would be like for the next 30, 40, or even 50 years. Ugh. Maybe you can relate to the story of Taylor and Pat. Maybe you're right in the middle of something very similar yourself. Or maybe you're hearing this story and you're thinking of other couples that that's happened to and you're terrified that it might happen to you too. Roommate syndrome represents the beginning of the end for way too many relationships. And the reason is that nobody ever tells you that roommate syndrome is actually supposed to happen. Look, when you're single and you're dating, life is supposed to be full of novelty and excitement and surprises. It's impossible to get bored and burned out because you're constantly getting to know new people and going on crazy adventures and having new experiences all the time. And all of those experiences and conversations help you decide whether or not you want to spend more time with a person or never see them again. And then you find somebody special and you just click. They seem attracted to you, you're attracted to them, their interests and values just lock in perfectly with your interests and values. It seems like you never run out of anything interesting to say to each other. They laugh at your stupid jokes. And the more time you spend with them, the better you feel about yourself. And you start to think, oh my gosh, I never want to stop spending time with this person. So you get married. And a lot of couples, they experience this honeymoon phase right after marriage. You and your partner are inseparable. You're going on tons of adventures. You're having lots of fun sex. Everything feels amazing. And then you have that first conflict. It's typically something small, like the right way to put the cups away after they've been washed, or whether or not to buy pre sliced cheese. And it kind of shatters this fantasy that everything's going to be perfect all the time. And those little things start to build up. And then bigger things start to happen. Like when your partner tries to initiate sex with you, but you feel like you're being pressured into it and that feels icky. So you lash out at them and shut them down and put them in their place. Or maybe your partner tells an embarrassing story about you at a party with your coworkers, and you just feel this surge of shame shoot through your body. You shut down and withdraw from your partner, and you don't really talk to them for the next 48 hours. Or maybe your partner spends more time staring at and caressing their phone than they do looking at and touching you, and you just feel completely rejected. You have these little moments, these experiences, and you start to realize that your partner is no longer the limitless source of happiness and validation and connection and safety and self esteem that you always thought they would be. As a matter of fact, sometimes the things that they say and do make you feel more lonely and angry and hurt and sad and disappointed and unsafe and worthless than you have ever felt in your entire life. And that's the point where you get stuck, gridlocked. You and your partner both probably want the same thing. You want things to be better, but you're at this standstill. You're waiting for your partner to move out of your way first so you can move forward. Neither one of you wants to make the first move. It's moments like this, moments of gridlock, of disconnection, of frustration and sadness, that are a sign that your relationship has exposed you to your limitations. And it's at that moment that it's really tempting to think maybe there's somebody else out there that could make me feel safe and loved and valued. And many people do choose that. They choose to leave the relationship and go see if they can find that person. And those who don't typically choose to stay in the relationship. Sometimes it's because they're afraid that this is just as good as it gets, and they don't want to go through the hassle of a divorce and then finding somebody new to be with only to end up right back here where they started. Or maybe they believe that it's not their problem. Their partner is the one to blame. And if they just wait around long enough, maybe their partner will come to their senses and realize that they are the problem and change their behavior and things will get better. But the real gift of roommate syndrome is that there's a third option. You don't have to sacrifice your marriage, and you don't have to sacrifice your own integrity. And that third option is that you can choose to face your own limitations within your marriage and learn to outgrow them. The real gift of marriage is that it hands you the opportunity to confront the weaknesses that you've been stealthily avoiding your entire life and then learn to master them. You get to stare your temper in the face and finally learn to tame it. You get to take responsibility for your selfishness and learn to subdue it. You get to examine your shame and learn to uproot it. You get to face your anxiety and learn to become friends with it. You get to come clean that when you feel like a failure of a husband at home, that you go lose yourself in your work because it's the one area of your life where you feel confident and competent and like you get some sort of respect. You get to own up to the fact that you are terrified to be alone with your own thoughts. So you spend 5 hours a day scrolling on your phone to keep your mind distracted, and the toll that that's taking on your relationship and your own mental health. You get to admit that you grew up in a home where emotions weren't acknowledged. Sometimes they were even punished. And because of that, you don't know how to identify, let alone express the emotions that you're feeling. And it keeps the people that you love at a distance. You get to fess up to the fact that you don't feel comfortable with sexual pleasure. You were always taught that it was evil, and you looked at people who enjoyed it as if they were selfish or wicked or dirty. And now you have no idea how to reconcile that shame and those beliefs with the desire that you have to connect with your partner. So you just avoid it altogether. You get to share with your partner that you have never had the courage to stand up for yourself in your life. That saying no to somebody makes you immensely uncomfortable. So you've been hiding your desires, your needs, and your wishes from the world for as long as you can remember. As you do these things, you're going to begin to be the kind of person who doesn't need constant validation from their partner to feel worthy of love. Someone who doesn't get their self-worth from their partner desiring them or laughing at their jokes or acting happy whenever they're around you. Choosing the third option is honestly terrifying. It will make you feel anxious. It will make you feel pressured. You will absolutely feel overwhelmed. You're going to have moments where it feels like your partner is trying to pull you back into those old familiar cycles that got you stuck in the first place. As Dr. David Schnarch says, marriage is designed to take your limitations and produce gridlock with it, where the choice is either giving up on yourself, giving up on your marriage, or growing. If you can learn to face your insecurities and your limitations, then calm yourself down, regulate your emotions, hold on to your integrity, and grow yourself up. What's on the other side of that is profound trust and deep connection and a freedom you have never known before. It fundamentally changes who you are as a person. And your marriage becomes this catalyst of fulfillment, meaning, satisfaction, purpose, and growth. But you're not getting those positive feelings from your partner's validation anymore. You're experiencing them because you become more capable of connection and love and trust and forgiveness. You've developed more courage and humility and wisdom. Now you can look in the mirror and be proud of the person staring back at you. Instead of hiding behind your limitations and trying to get by doing the absolute minimum for your relationship, you are now offering the very best of yourself. This is the gift on the other side of roommate syndrome. Getting stuck in roommate syndrome often means the end of a chapter in your marriage. And when some people get to this chapter, they just get discouraged and they close the book. Some people don't ever work up the courage to turn the next page because their intuition just tells them that things are probably going to get worse before they get better. But to those who know the gift on the other side of roommate syndrome, they willingly march forward into the discomfort, ready to stare their demons in the eyes and overcome them. They know that their story is the hero's story, and heroes don't run from dragons, they slay them. Carl Jung said, "That which you need the most will be found where you least want to look." And in marriage, the place we least want to look is the mirror. So, if you're feeling stuck, if the passion is starting to fade, if the connection between you and your partner seems to be getting weaker, and you're starting to feel more like roommates than lovers, in most cases, it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong in your marriage. It doesn't mean that you chose the wrong partner. It means that you're on the right path. You've simply reached the edge of your limitations. And what you do next might unlock the opportunity for you to have the kind of marriage that most people only dream of. For the next few weeks, I'm going to be talking a lot more about the nuances of roommate syndrome. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to hear me talk more about roommate syndrome, I would love to have your subscription. And if you want to learn what actions you need to take to grow up and face your limitations head on and outgrow roommate syndrome, I want to invite you to check out the Epic Marriage Club. You can find a link with more details down in the description below.